A girl wakes up after a party and is horrified to discover that she has become invisible to everyone around her. Just before dawn, Neve's body sinks to the bottom of the lake. Suddenly, the girl regains consciousness and immediately surfaces. Crawling onto the shore, frightened and disoriented, Neve realizes she has lost her phone. She looks around and calls for help, but no one answers, while a flock of crows flies overhead. Soaked to the bone, Neve makes her way through a dark forest, where the eerie birds continue to pursue her. Soon, she reaches the road and hurries home. Meanwhile, her stepfather, Daniel, returns from a run and checks in on his wife, Maria, Neve's mother, who is working on a new painting. She feels a lack of inspiration and asks her husband for help. Before long, they head out to the yard to collect eggs from the chicken coop, but find not a single egg. Daniel suggests that something might have scared the chickens and decides to check the surveillance footage. Suddenly, the same flock of crows flies over their house. Meanwhile, Neve's stepbrother, Max, wakes up in his room. He sees the birds in the sky through the window in the ceiling, and suddenly, one crow falls lifelessly onto the glass, startling him. Max picks up the dead bird and walks into his sister Katie's room, where she struggles to open her eyes after a wild party. He shows her the lifeless crow, and Katie recoils in disgust, asking him to get it away from her. Max decides to show the crow to Neve but finds her room empty. At that moment, Maria walks by and is surprised to discover that Neve is missing. Anxious, she immediately calls her, but there's no answer. Maria then goes to Katie and asks where Neve might be since they were at the party together and were supposed to come back together. However, Katie insists that she is not responsible for keeping track of Neve. Soon, the family gathers for breakfast. Maria continues to question Katie about when and where she last saw Neve. Katie is confident that there's no reason to worry, suggesting that Neve might have stayed over at her biological father Tom's house, who was also at the party. Still, Katie decides to check Neve's whereabouts using a special app. She confirms that Neve's phone is still in the same location where they spent the evening, meaning she could have just fallen asleep in one of the tents. Meanwhile, Neve is making her way home. Along the way, she notices a sign for the motorcycle club the Abington Vipers, and memories of a recent race she participated in flash before her eyes. Suddenly, the neighbor's dog starts barking at Neve, but she scares it off with a shout. Daniel sets out to search for Neve and soon finds himself at the racers' campsite where the party took place. There, he meets Neve's friend, Nikki, who assures him that he hasn't seen her since last night. However, the app indicates that Neve should be somewhere nearby, so Daniel continues his search. Venturing deeper into the woods, he dials Neve's number and discovers her phone lying on the ground near some trees. Daniel immediately calls Maria to inform her that he found Neve's phone, but she is nowhere to be seen. He suggests that Neve might have just dropped it and then gone to her father Tom's place. Maria is convinced that her daughter wouldn't do that, but she decides to call Tom just in case. Meanwhile, Neve is returning home and sees Max in the yard, burying and photographing the crow. Finally, she enters the house and calls for her mother. Neve explains that she had a very strange morning and doesn't remember anything, but Maria is currently leaving a voicemail for Tom, unaware of her daughter's presence. Neve feels like her mother is intentionally ignoring her and apologizes for not notifying her that she wouldn't be home all night. However, Maria genuinely doesn't see Neve and, unable to reach Tom, decides to call the police. The woman describes Neve and the circumstances of her disappearance, causing Neve to start panicking. Neve grabs her mother's hand, but Maria feels nothing. Neve then tries to get her attention in other ways, but nothing seems to work.
Fuck's sake, I'm right here!
Worried, Neve goes to Katie, but she doesn't notice her either. Suddenly, Neve approaches a mirror and discovers a large red mark on her neck, as if she's been strangled. Panicking, she runs to the bathroom and finds several more wounds on her head and body. She takes a shower and cries, not understanding what has happened to her. Daniel heads to Tom's place and finds him sleeping in his car outside his house after the wild party. He informs Tom that Neve is missing, but Tom suggests that she probably stayed in one of the tents. Daniel also asks when Tom last saw Neve, but Tom distractedly replies that he didn't check the time. Daniel chastises him for his irresponsibility and decides to continue searching for his stepdaughter. However, Tom says he'll call his friend William, and he and the motocross guys who were at the party will help. Meanwhile, Neve steps out of the shower and leaves a message on the foggy mirror. "I'm still here." In her room, she notices a photo of her and her boyfriend, Joseph, and recalls the race they participated in together. In a flashback, they discuss their results, and Joseph gives Neve some tips while Nikki watches them. Soon, Maria goes to see Joseph. He tells her that he last saw Neve around 11:30 p.m. but lost sight of her in the crowd. Joseph tried calling her, but she didn't answer, so he assumed she went home. He also offers to help search for Neve and promises to bring his dad along. Then Katie bursts into Max's room, saying their father wants everyone to help look for Neve. In the hallway, Neve approaches Max and touches his cheek, but he feels nothing and follows Katie to the field where the search party is gathering. Flashes from the party race through Neve's mind, and she takes her motorcycle and rides off. However, in reality, the motorcycle remains in the garage. On her way, she remembers how she finished in second place during the race and how her mother and father cheered for her. Meanwhile, Maria arrives at the field, and Daniel tells her that there are still no updates. However, William is confident that they will find Neve since he has enlisted all his friends, who are already searching the area.
Are they looking for a body?
Max.
Maria and Daniel reassure everyone that Neve will be okay and then send the kids home since enough people are already looking for her. Soon, Neve arrives at the field, but once again, no one notices her. She recalls the party again, where Joseph tells her that he loves her. Suddenly, she sees a bucket of water being dumped on a stranger and insists that they're looking in the wrong place. She's in the lake. It seems Neve is trying to connect with Joseph on a mental level to help him find her body. While searching the woods, Maria encounters Tom. He mentions that Neve seemed perfectly normal last night, even though they didn't talk much. Maria confesses that they had a fight the night before the party, and she's afraid that's why Neve hasn't returned. However, Tom points out that Neve loves her and wouldn't do this to her. Their conversation is interrupted by Detective Christine Wyatt, who wants to help them before the police arrive. She asks where Neve might have gone and expresses concern that the dozens of searchers could disturb any evidence. Invisible Neve watches everything happening, and then their dog, Rebel, runs up to her, seemingly sensing her presence, and allows herself to be petted. Daniel calls for the dog, but Rebel follows Neve deeper into the woods. Daniel decides to go after the dog, thinking she might have picked up Neve's scent. Christine warns the searchers not to touch anything so as not to interfere with the police investigation, and then everyone heads off after Rebel. It turns out that Neve is using the dog to lead the searchers to the lake.
I'm here. Come find me.
The group stops at the edge of the lake, and at that moment, a flock of crows flies overhead, then begins to circle above the water. Nicky recalls that his grandmother always told him to follow the birds, and Joseph realizes that something is definitely in the water. They dive into the lake, while Neve approaches her mother, who is barely holding back her emotions, and tells her that she loves her. Finally, Neve's body is brought ashore. Tom tries to revive his daughter, but William reminds him that it's too late. Soon, the police arrive at the lake, and the shocked family and friends of Neve begin to head home. Sergeant Diana Ard informs Christine that they found a recently burned boat on the shore, which may be connected to Neve's case. Meanwhile, in the woods, Neve notices her father staring intently in her direction and realizes that he can see her. Tom tries to convince himself that it's just a hallucination, but Neve continues to follow him. Tom runs away from his daughter's ghost and jumps into his car, but Neve rides after him on her motorcycle. She then stops in the middle of the road and pleads for her father to stop, but he doesn't listen and accidentally hits her. Neve is thrown to the side of the road, and a shocked Tom rushes to her. Neve then stands up and tells her father that she's still here and that she needs his help. That evening, Neve finds herself at her father's house. Tom, trying to cope with the shock, starts drinking, but Neve realizes he won't be able to help her in that state. She explains that she no longer feels thirst, hunger, or fatigue, and Tom finally asks what happened to her last night. Neve says it definitely wasn't an accident since she has a lot of bruises on her body, as if she had been beaten. However, she can't remember the details of the last few days. She asks Tom what she was doing and who she was with at the party. He tells her he noticed her by the campfire and that she seemed sad. But then she went off to dance, and he lost sight of her. Tom asks to be left alone for a while, but Neve insists she won't leave this world until she finds out who is responsible for her death. Meanwhile, Neve's body is taken to the morgue, and she follows it. She looks at her body and struggles to hold back her emotions. Neve notices a wound on her finger and remembers burning herself on a sparkler at the party. After a while, she hears the coroner describing her injuries. It turns out she was strangled with a belt, and a piece of paint or metal is found in the strangulation mark and sent for analysis. Then the coroner begins the autopsy. This frightens Neve, and her emotions become so intense that the lights in the room start to flicker. Later, Tom comes to Neve's family home because Maria hasn't been answering his calls. He is greeted by Daniel, who explains that the doctors have given her sedatives and that she is now sleeping. Daniel invites Tom inside, and they talk about what happens to people after they die. Tom believes their souls go somewhere, but Daniel is sure it's just the end. He also suggests that Tom come with them for the official identification, but Tom declines, saying he's already seen enough. At the morgue, the coroner tells Diana and Christine that Neve was killed by strangulation, and she ended up in the water after she was already dead. Additionally, the toxicology report shows that Neve had alcohol and ecstasy in her system. The coroner believes Neve didn't take the drugs willingly. Someone must have slipped them into her drinks. That night, Neve returns home and sees Daniel saying goodbye to Tom. She tells her father what the coroner thinks happened to her the night before. She also insists that she only drank from people she trusted, meaning someone she knew must have drugged her. Meanwhile, Max wakes up and notices Tom talking to himself on their doorstep. Tom quickly turns around, and Max hurriedly retreats inside. Later that night in her room, Neve remembers how Katie had asked her what she was drinking at the party. Neve replied that it was beer someone had given her. The next morning, devastated, Daniel and Maria go to identify their daughter and say their final goodbyes. Neve is also there, holding her mother's hand, but Maria still can't feel her presence.
They loved you so much, you idiot.
That same day, Tom goes through the letters and gifts sent to him by concerned people. Just as he's about to open a bottle of wine, Neve bursts in and tells him she needs his computer. She wants to find photos from the party on her friend's social media to remember who she was talking to. Tom tells her he's sorry that he's the only one who can see Neve. He explains that he found a website discussing the multiverse theory, which suggests that a person continues to exist in other worlds after they pass away. Tom speculates that something similar might have happened to Neve, but she doesn't know for sure. As Neve scrolls through the photos, she remembers that it was Nikki who offered her the beer. She asks her father to write down the names of everyone he saw at the party while she decides to head to the motorcycle club. As she approaches her bike, she recalls how the race ended in a collision with a rider she tried to overtake. At the club, Neve looks at photos on Nikki's phone and then watches as Nikki and Joseph prepare for their next training session. When Joseph changes clothes, Neve notices a bruise on his chest. Before long, they are interrupted by William, who says they need to go to the police and give statements. He asks if they saw anything at the party that could help the investigation, but the guys hesitantly say they drank too much and can't remember anything. Once William leaves, Nikki asks if they're still sticking to the story of not remembering, and Joseph confirms they are. This raises a red flag for Neve, and she realizes the guys are clearly somehow involved in her death. Neve then moves to another room and sees detectives and her mother asking all witnesses to give statements. Everyone present begins to actively discuss what happened, and Neve yells for them to leave her alone.
Back off!
Suddenly, the club really starts to empty out. Frightened, Neve steps outside and returns to Tom. She tells him that she's discovered Nikki and Joseph's involvement and then looks at the photos again. In one picture, she spots the girl who handed her the sparklers. Neve is sure she might know something. Tom recognizes the girl as Alex Wyatt, Joseph's cousin, and mentions that he taught her when she was younger. In another flashback, Alex tells Neve that she works in environmental protection but has to work at a gas station to support herself. In the present, Tom and Neve head to the gas station, and Neve asks her father to talk to Alex. At first, she approaches the gas station herself to confirm that Alex is working there. To Neve's surprise, Alex can see her too. Alex doesn't realize Neve is dead and says they had a great time at the party. Neve asks who else Alex saw her with. Alex explains that she saw Neve with Nikki, and then Joseph approached them. Neve went off with Joseph into the woods, which surprised Alex since she didn't think Neve was into guys like him. Neve thanks Alex for the information and urges her to be careful. Meanwhile, Tom receives a message from Daniel, who wants to discuss organizing Neve's farewell. Neve returns to the car with Tom and shares that Alex can see her. Tom is happy that she can be seen by someone other than him and hopes that Maria will also be able to sense her presence. He tells Neve about Daniel's message and mentions that he needs to stop by their house. Neve asks her father to drop her off at the party location so she can try to remember more. In a flashback, we see Neve arguing with Joseph because she doesn't see a future in Abingdon and wants to leave to start a new life. However, Joseph is upset that she thinks she's better than him and intends to leave him behind.
I don't think this is over!
In the present, Neve's family discusses her farewell and looks at her photos. Maria is upset that the entire town is talking about her daughter while the people responsible for her death have not been found. Suddenly, Tom decides to confess that he can still see Neve and that she continues to be invisibly present with them. Maria gets angry, believing her ex-husband's words are just drunken nonsense, and Daniel kicks him out. Tom returns home and starts drinking again. Meanwhile, Maria lets her emotions flow, and Max and Katie try to comfort her. In the morning at the gas station, Alex is setting out fresh newspapers and is puzzled to see Neve's photo on the front page. Soon after, Joseph comes home after a ride on his motorcycle. His father asks if he gave a statement, and Joseph replies that he did. The guy decides to relax in the trailer, but suddenly the lamp above him starts flickering due to Neve's presence and emotions, as she is nearby and clearly blaming him for her death. Would you want the chance to come back to this world after you're gone? Or to see your loved ones who have passed away? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.